5 seconds. That was all it took for my life to split into before and after. The monitor beside me flattened for a fraction of a second, then spiked again. Nurses rushed past like shadows. My body refused to respond, trapped somewhere between waking and disappearing. The surgery had ended, but something was wrong. I could feel it, even through the fog. I tried to move my hand. Nothing. Tried to speak. Silence. The world around me blurred, voices stretching and fading as if I was underwater. Then I heard his voice. Calm. Controlled. Too calm. My husband. He stood near the door, not beside me. Not holding my hand. Not asking if I was okay. He was asking something else. The doctor's tone dropped, cautious, measured. Words like complication and recovery floated through the haze, but my husband didn't sound worried. He sounded impatient. That was the first crack. The second came when he stepped closer to my bed, just enough for me to see him through half-open eyes. His face didn't carry fear or relief. It carried calculation. I tried to call his name, to let him know I was still here, still fighting through whatever this was. My lips didn't move. My body didn't listen. He leaned slightly toward the doctor, lowering his voice, but not enough. Not enough for me to miss it. If she doesn't wake up properly, what are the options? The words didn't feel real. Not after everything we had built. Not after the promises, the years, the life we shared. But the tone behind them, it wasn't grief. It was strategy. The doctor hesitated. Explained risks. Long-term care. Financial impact. That word again. Money. Even now. Something cold settled deep inside me, cutting through the confusion, the weakness, the fear. This wasn't just concern. This was preparation. My vision dimmed, but I forced myself to stay aware, to listen, to hold on to anything that could explain what was happening. Footsteps moved. Papers shifted. Then silence. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time had no meaning here. When I opened my eyes again, the room was quieter. Machines hummed steadily. The lights above me burned too bright. And he was gone. No note. No hand on mine. No sign he had ever stood there at all. A nurse entered, checking monitors, adjusting something near my arm. Her movements were quick, practiced, but there was something off in the way she avoided looking at me for too long. I wanted to ask where he went. I wanted to ask why. But my voice still didn't exist. Hours later, I learned the truth in fragments. He had left the hospital, signed something before he went, and told them not to contact him unless it was absolutely necessary. The words echoed inside me long after the nurse said them. Not necessary. I lay there, unable to move, unable to speak, but fully aware of one thing that changed everything. My husband hadn't just walked away. He had already decided something about me. Something final. And I had no idea what he had set in motion before leaving that room. The night stretched longer than it should have, each second dragging like it refused to end. I lay still, trapped inside my own body, listening to machines confirm that I was alive while everything else about me felt suspended. Footsteps came and went. Voices blurred together. But one thing never returned. Him. Morning light crept into the room slowly, cutting through the sterile white walls. It felt unreal, like the world outside had continued without me, untouched by what had just happened. A nurse entered again, different this time. Older. Sharper eyes. She checked the monitors, then paused when she noticed I was watching her. Really watching. Her expression shifted. Not surprise. Concern. She leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice as if the walls could hear. You are more aware than they think. The words hit harder than anything before. I tried to respond, to show her that I understood, but my body still refused to cooperate. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. Your husband signed limited care authorization before he left. Something inside me went cold. Limited care. Even in my condition, the meaning was clear enough. Restrictions. Boundaries. Decisions made without me. The nurse continued, her tone careful, almost conflicted. It affects what we are allowed to do if your condition worsens. My heartbeat quickened, the monitor reacting instantly. She noticed. Her eyes sharpened again. You need to stay calm. Calm. The word felt distant, impossible. How do you stay calm when your life is being decided in a room you can't even control? I focused on breathing, slow, steady, forcing my body to cooperate in the smallest way it could. The nurse adjusted something on the machine, then leaned in closer. There was hesitation in her voice now. Like she was stepping over a line she wasn't supposed to cross. Someone came asking about you late last night. That didn't make sense. My husband had left. So who else would come? Her eyes flicked toward the door again. Not family. Not hospital staff. A man. The word hung in the air. He didn't give a name at first. Just asked questions. Very specific ones. My mind struggled to keep up, trying to piece together something that didn't fit. Questions about what? The nurse continued. About your surgery. Your condition. Your husband. A chill spread through me. This wasn't concern. This was investigation. He left something at the front desk before he went. My pulse jumped again. The nurse straightened slightly, her tone shifting back to professional distance. It's being processed. That was all she said. No details. No explanation. But it was enough. Someone had come. Someone who didn't belong. Someone asking the right questions at the wrong time. The nurse finished her checks and stepped back, her expression returning to neutral. But before she left, she paused. Just for a second. Then spoke again, softer than before. If you can hear me, you are not as alone as you think. The door closed behind her. Silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence anymore. Now it was filled with something else. A presence I couldn't see. A move that had already been made without my knowledge. Hours passed again, but this time I wasn't drifting. I was waiting. Waiting for another voice. Another sign. Another crack in whatever was being built around me. Then, late afternoon, the door opened. Slow. Deliberate. Footsteps entered the room. Not rushed. Not uncertain. Confident. I couldn't turn my head, couldn't adjust my position, but I felt it instantly. Whoever had walked in wasn't here by accident. The footsteps stopped beside my bed. A brief silence followed. Then a voice, low and steady, cut through everything. You're still here. That means I'm not too late. My heartbeat spiked. Because something about that voice carried certainty. Not hope. Not doubt. Certainty. And whatever he knew was about to change everything. The man didn't rush. He stood beside my bed for a moment, as if studying more than just my condition. I could feel it in the silence, the way he observed, measured, confirmed something before speaking again. Your chart says limited response. Your eyes say something else. My heartbeat reacted instantly, the monitor picking up the shift. He noticed. Good. That means you can hear me. Relief didn't come. Not yet. This was still too strange, too uncertain. Who was he? Why was he here? He moved slightly, pulling a chair closer to the bed. The sound scraped softly against the floor, controlled, intentional. I'm not family. I'm not hospital staff. And I'm definitely not here by coincidence. Each word landed with weight. He leaned forward just enough for his presence to feel closer, more real. I came because of your husband. The air inside me seemed to freeze. That name again. That shadow still hanging over everything. The man continued, his tone steady, but carrying something sharper beneath it. Last night, he made a call. Not to the hospital. Not to a relative. To someone who should not be involved in medical decisions. My mind struggled to keep up, but something inside me locked onto every word. A deal was being discussed. The word deal didn't belong here. Not in a hospital room. Not next to someone barely alive. But it was there. Clear. Cold. The man shifted slightly, placing something on the small table beside my bed. A folder. Thin. Dark. Precise. I can't ask you to respond. Not yet. But I need you to understand. His voice dropped lower, more focused. Your condition isn't just a medical situation anymore. It's leverage. The word hit harder than anything before. Leverage. Used. Measured. Controlled. I tried again to move, to react, to show him I was still here, still thinking, still aware. Nothing. But my heartbeat gave me away again. He noticed. That's enough. A brief pause followed. Then he opened the folder. Papers shifted, the sound cutting through the quiet like something sharp. Your husband has already begun transferring assets. Another hit. Faster this time. He didn't wait for me to process. Joint accounts. Properties. Insurance adjustments. Each word felt like a piece of something breaking apart. This wasn't fear. This wasn't uncertainty. This was preparation. For an outcome he had already accepted. Or planned. The man leaned back slightly, watching me carefully. I don't think this was sudden. That sentence changed everything. Because it meant one thing. This didn't start in the hospital. It started long before. He tapped lightly on the folder. I'm a lawyer. Utah-based. I deal with cases where things don't add up. Utah. Far from here. Far from my life. Which made it worse. Because it meant whatever this was had reached beyond everything I thought was safe. Someone flagged the transaction patterns last night. Too fast. Too clean. Too early for someone who's supposed to be waiting on recovery outcomes. The room felt smaller. Tighter. Like the walls were closing in around something I couldn't yet see. He leaned forward again. Then he said something that shifted everything into something far more dangerous. He's not waiting to see if you survive. He's preparing for you not to. The words didn't echo. They settled. Heavy. Final. But the man didn't stop there. And the reason I'm here. A pause. Long enough to feel deliberate. Is because someone already paid $200,000 to make sure the truth doesn't disappear with you. My heartbeat surged so violently the machine reacted again. Not fear this time. Something else. Because now there was a new question. Who would pay that kind of money? For me? And why? The number stayed in my head long after he said it. $200,000. Not a guess. Not a rumor. Paid. For me. The lawyer didn't rush to explain. He watched the monitor instead, reading the spikes in my heartbeat like answers I couldn't speak out loud. Good. That means you understand the weight of it. I did. But understanding only made it worse. Because nothing about my life connected to something like this. I wasn't powerful. I wasn't famous. I wasn't someone people paid that kind of money to protect. Which meant one thing. I didn't know everything about my own life. The lawyer opened the folder again, flipping to a different page. His movement stayed calm, but the energy in the room had shifted into something tighter, more dangerous. The payment came through a private trust. Another crack. Private trust meant layers. Hidden ownership. Protection. He slid a document slightly closer to me, though I couldn't move to read it. It was created less than 48 hours ago. My heartbeat surged again. 48 hours. Before the surgery. Before everything went wrong. This wasn't reaction. This was anticipation. The lawyer leaned in slightly, lowering his voice again. Whoever set this up knew something was going to happen to you. A cold wave moved through me, deeper than anything before. Not accident. Not complication. Planned. The word formed silently in my mind, heavier than anything I had felt since waking up. He watched me carefully, then nodded once, like he had just confirmed something important. Exactly. The room felt different now. No longer just a hospital room. Something closer to a scene that had already been set before I ever walked into surgery. The lawyer straightened slightly, shifting to another page. There's more. Of course there was. There was always more. Your husband isn't the one who paid the money. A brief, sharp pause. But he is connected to the trust. My thoughts stumbled, trying to catch up. Connected how? The lawyer answered before I could even finish forming the question. Indirectly. Through a third party. A name appeared on the document. He tapped it once, not saying it out loud, but the weight behind that single gesture was enough. Familiar. Not from my daily life. From somewhere older. Buried. My mind reached for it, pushing through fog, through weakness, through everything holding me back. And then it hit. A memory I hadn't thought about in years. A case. A lawsuit. A settlement that never fully made sense. The lawyer saw it in my reaction, the shift in the monitor confirming it. You remember something. Not a question. A statement. He leaned closer. That case wasn't closed the way you think it was. The room tilted, not physically, but mentally. Because that case had been years ago. Something small. Something resolved. Or at least that's what I had believed. The lawyer's voice lowered even more. It involved medical negligence. Records that disappeared. Test results that didn't match. My heartbeat surged harder than before. Because suddenly, this surgery didn't feel random anymore. It felt connected. And then he said the one thing that turned everything into something far bigger than betrayal. The surgeon who operated on you today. A pause. Deliberate. Was named in that case. Everything inside me went still. Not fear. Not shock. Something deeper. Because now the pieces weren't just falling into place. They were locking together. My husband. The transfer of assets. The limited care authorization. The unknown payment. The lawyer from another state. The past I thought was buried. None of it was separate. It was one story. One plan. And I was at the center of it. The lawyer watched me for a long second, then spoke again, quieter than before. This wasn't just about leaving you. It was about making sure you never wake up to tell what you already know. The machines hummed louder in the silence that followed. And for the first time since I opened my eyes, I understood something clearly. I wasn't recovering. I was surviving something that had already been set in motion long before I ever entered that operating room. The room no longer felt like a place of recovery. It felt like a controlled space where something unfinished was waiting to be completed. The lawyer closed the folder slowly, his eyes never leaving the monitor. He wasn't just listening to me. He was reading me, measuring every reaction I couldn't hide. Good. You're connecting it. The words weren't comforting. They were confirmation. I forced my focus inward, pushing through the weight in my body, trying to regain even the smallest control. A finger. A blink. Anything. Nothing came. But the lawyer noticed the effort. You don't need to move yet. You just need to stay aware. Stay aware. It sounded simple. It wasn't. Because awareness meant understanding that the danger hadn't passed. It was still here. Still active. Still waiting. He leaned back slightly, lowering his voice even more. There's something else you need to know. Of course there was. There was always another layer. Your husband didn't just sign limited care. He authorized a transfer. My heartbeat spiked instantly. Transfer. The word didn't belong in recovery. The lawyer continued, precise, controlled. If your condition doesn't improve within a certain window, you get moved to a private long-term facility. Something about the way he said it made everything inside me tighten. Not a standard facility. Not a recommended one. A specific one. The lawyer tapped the folder lightly. Owned through the same chain connected to that trust. The pattern locked into place. Not just abandonment. Containment. My breathing changed, shallow but faster, and the machine responded immediately. He noticed. Exactly. That's the point where this stops being passive. This wasn't about letting nature decide. It was about controlling the outcome. The lawyer stood up slowly, pacing once across the room, then back. I delayed the transfer. My heartbeat steadied for a brief second. How? He answered before the question fully formed. Money creates speed. More money creates hesitation. A brief pause. 200,000 creates interference. The number again. Heavy. Real. Someone had stepped in at exactly the right moment. But why? The question burned louder now than everything else. The lawyer stopped beside the bed again. Whoever paid that amount didn't do it blindly. They knew your name. Your case history. Your connection to that surgeon. My mind pushed harder, searching for something I had missed. A face. A moment. A detail buried somewhere in the past. The lawyer studied me closely, then said something that shifted everything again. There was a note attached to the payment. My heartbeat rose again. A note meant intention. A message. He reached into the folder and pulled out a single sheet, holding it just above where I could barely see the edge of it. It wasn't long. Just one line. He didn't read it immediately. Instead, he watched the monitor, waiting, almost like he needed to be sure I was ready to hear it. Then he spoke. Make sure she lives long enough to remember what they did. The words didn't just land. They cut. Because that wasn't protection. That was purpose. Whoever sent that message didn't just want me alive. They wanted me aware. They wanted me to remember. And more importantly, they wanted me to do something with it. The lawyer lowered the paper slowly. I don't think this is about saving you. A pause, carefully placed. I think this is about using you. That realization hit deeper than anything before. Because it meant one thing. I wasn't just a victim. I was a key to something bigger, something unfinished, something dangerous. The lawyer stepped back slightly, his tone shifting into something more direct. Right now, you're alive because someone interrupted the plan. But that window won't stay open. Footsteps echoed faintly outside the room. Both of us noticed. At the same time, his expression sharpened instantly. Timing. Not random. Not casual. The door handle moved. Slow. Deliberate. The lawyer's eyes locked onto mine. And in that second, without saying it directly, he made one thing clear. Whoever was about to walk in was part of this. The door didn't open all the way at once. It moved slowly, controlled, as if whoever stood outside already knew what waited inside and wasn't in a hurry to reveal it. The lawyer didn't step back. He didn't hide. He stayed exactly where he was, one hand resting lightly on the folder, his posture calm but ready. A nurse entered. Not the same one from before. This one moved differently. Too precise. Too aware. Her eyes scanned the room once, quickly, then settled on the lawyer. A brief pause passed between them. Silent. Measured. Then she stepped further inside, closing the door behind her. The click echoed louder than it should have. She approached my bed, her movement smooth, almost rehearsed. On the surface, everything looked normal. A routine check. A standard visit. But nothing about this felt routine anymore. The lawyer spoke first, his tone neutral. You're not assigned to this patient. The nurse didn't react immediately. She reached for the monitor, adjusting a setting that didn't need adjusting. Then she answered, calm, controlled. Shift coverage changed. Too quick. Too clean. The lawyer didn't argue. He didn't need to. He was watching her the same way he had been watching me. Carefully. Patiently. The nurse's hand moved toward the foreline. That's when everything inside me tightened. Something was wrong. Not instinct. Not fear. Recognition. The way her fingers hovered, the way she checked the line, it wasn't routine. It was deliberate. The lawyer stepped closer, just enough to shift the space between them. What are you administering? A simple question. But it landed heavy. The nurse paused for half a second. Half a second too long. Just fluids. Her voice didn't shake. But it didn't convince either. The lawyer's eyes narrowed slightly. That's not scheduled for another hour. Silence followed. The room felt smaller again. Tighter. Like everything was closing in on a single point. The nurse straightened, her expression shifting just enough to reveal something beneath the calm. Annoyance. Not fear. Annoyance. She reached into her pocket slowly. The lawyer's posture changed instantly. Not aggressive, but ready. The air snapped into something sharper. She pulled out a small vial. Clear. Almost invisible in the light. My heartbeat surged violently. Because even without knowing what it was, I knew it didn't belong. The lawyer spoke again, lower now. That's not hospital issued. This time, she didn't answer right away. She looked at him directly. And for the first time, the mask slipped. Just slightly. Enough to show intent. You shouldn't be here. The words weren't a question. They were a statement. A problem being identified. The lawyer didn't move. Neither did she. But the tension between them had shifted completely. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was interference. My breathing grew uneven, the machine reacting instantly. The nurse's eyes flicked toward it. Then back to the foreline. Decision time. The lawyer stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Put it down. His voice was calm, but final. The nurse hesitated. Not long, but enough. Then something changed. Not in her. In the hallway. Footsteps. More than one. Approaching fast. The lawyer heard it. So did she. And in that single moment, everything shifted again. Her hand tightened slightly around the vial. Her eyes moved to the door. Calculating. Then back to the fore. Faster now. No hesitation. The lawyer reacted instantly, grabbing her wrist just before it reached the line. The vial slipped slightly in her grip. The door burst open. 2 security officers stepped in, followed by the same older nurse from earlier. Everything froze for a split second. Then the vial dropped from her hand, hitting the floor with a sharp, unmistakable sound. Silence followed. Heavy. Final. The nurse didn't struggle, didn't speak. She simply stood there, her expression empty again, like nothing had happened. But it had. The line had been crossed. The plan had been interrupted. And now, for the first time since I woke up, there was proof. Clear. Undeniable. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't chance. This was an attempt. And it had just failed. The room didn't return to normal after that. It couldn't. 2 security officers stood near the door, blocking any exit. The older nurse moved quickly to the line, checking every connection with sharp, practiced hands. The vial remained on the floor untouched, but its presence filled the space like a shadow that refused to leave. The woman who had entered as a nurse didn't resist. She didn't explain. She didn't even look at me. Her eyes stayed forward, empty, like whatever role she had stepped into had already ended. The lawyer stepped back slightly, but his attention never left her. His calm hadn't broken, but something in his posture had shifted into something firmer. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was confirmation. The older nurse spoke quietly to security, her voice low but urgent. Instructions were given. The woman was escorted out without a word, her footsteps fading down the hall like something being erased. But nothing about this could be erased. The door closed again. Silence followed. Real silence this time. Heavy with everything that had just happened. The older nurse turned toward the lawyer, her expression tight. That wasn't stuff. He nodded once. I know. No surprise. No confusion. Just certainty. She looked at me next, her eyes softer now but still sharp with concern. We're moving her. The lawyer's gaze shifted immediately. Where? A pause. Somewhere they can't reach her. That answer carried more weight than anything else. Because it meant one thing. This wasn't over. The danger hadn't passed. It had only been exposed. The lawyer stepped closer to my bed again, lowering his voice. They're going to accelerate now. My heartbeat reacted instantly. Of course they would. The plan had been interrupted. Which meant the next move wouldn't be subtle. It would be faster. More direct. More dangerous. The older nurse began adjusting the bed, preparing for transport. Machines were checked again, lines secured, everything moving with precise urgency. The lawyer continued, his tone steady. The payment bought time. But time is all it bought. A pause. And time is running out. The words settled in deep. Because now everything was clear. I wasn't just recovering. I was being moved in a race I couldn't even see. The lawyer reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, placing it carefully beside my hand. If you wake fully before I see you again, remember one thing. His voice lowered further. Your husband is not the end of this. A brief pause. He's just the part you recognize. That truth hit harder than anything before. Because it meant what I feared was real. This went beyond him. Beyond betrayal. Beyond abandonment. The older nurse signaled that everything was ready. The bed began to move. Slow at first. Then faster. The hallway lights passed overhead one by one, each one marking distance from the room where everything had changed. Staff moved around us, controlled, coordinated, but the tension followed like something alive. The lawyer walked beside me for a few steps, then stopped. This is where I step out. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. Different roles. Different moves. He looked down at me one last time. You're not the victim anymore. A pause. You're the evidence. Then he stepped away. The doors ahead opened automatically, leading into a restricted wing of the hospital. As the bed crossed the threshold, something shifted inside me. Not physically. Mentally. The fear was still there. The weakness. The uncertainty. But beneath it, something else had taken root. Clarity. They had tried to silence me. They had tried to erase me. And now they had failed. The doors closed behind us, locking in a new phase. because whatever happened next would decide whether I stayed a target or became something far more dangerous to them. The new room felt different the moment I entered. Quieter, sealed, controlled in a way that didn't just protect me, but isolated me from everything that had almost ended my life hours ago. No random footsteps. No unfamiliar faces. Every movement around me carried purpose now. Days passed, though time felt distorted. Something inside me began to return. First a finger, then a slight movement in my hand. Small victories, but enough. Enough to prove one thing. I wasn't going to disappear. The older nurse stayed consistent, watching over every detail. No replacements. No gaps. The system around me had tightened. But the real shift came when I finally opened my eyes fully and held them there. The world stopped blurring. Voices became clear. And control slowly came back. The lawyer returned the same day. He didn't look surprised. He looked ready. Good. Now we can finish this. Finish. Not fix. Not survive. Finish. That word changed everything. He placed the folder in front of me again, but this time I could see it. Really see it. Documents. Transfers. Authorizations. Proof. All of it. My husband hadn't just walked away. He had signed decisions designed to limit my care, move me out, and quietly erase me from the life we built. But he had made one mistake. He assumed I wouldn't come back. The lawyer leaned forward. Everything is already in motion. A pause. We just needed you awake. Because now it wasn't just suspicion. It was testimony. My testimony. Days later, I was moved again. Not hidden. Presented. A controlled environment. Legal presence. Documentation ready. And him. My husband. He walked in confident. Calm. The same controlled expression I had seen before surgery. Because in his mind, this was over. He stopped when he saw me sitting upright. Alive. Watching him. The silence stretched longer than anything before. For the first time, he didn't look prepared. The lawyer stepped forward, placing the documents on the table between us. Transfers traced. Signatures verified. The facility connected. The unauthorized attempt documented. Each piece laid out clean. Precise. Final. My husband's composure cracked slowly, not dramatically, but enough. Because now it wasn't just words. It was proof. And I was sitting right there. Breathing. Remembering. The lawyer spoke, but I barely heard him. Because this moment, this was mine. I looked directly at the man who had already decided I wouldn't survive. And for the first time since waking up, I spoke. My voice was rough, but steady enough. You planned my ending. The words landed harder than anything else in the room. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because there was nothing left to say. Everything had already been exposed. Authorities stepped in next. Quiet. Efficient. Final. The same way he had tried to make me disappear. Except this time, it was him. As they took him away, he looked back once. Not at the lawyer. Not at the officers. At me. But whatever control he once had was gone. Completely. The room grew quiet again after he left. But it wasn't the same silence. This one felt earned. I leaned back slightly, the weight of everything settling, but not crushing. Because I hadn't just survived. I had seen it, understood it, and ended it. The lawyer gathered the documents, then paused. The person who paid the $200,000. A brief pause. You'll meet them soon. I looked at him, but this time I didn't ask why. Because some answers were already on their way. And for the first time since everything began, I wasn't waiting in fear. I was waiting with control. Because the truth hadn't just saved me. It had given me something far more powerful. The final move. Tell me in the comments that where are you watching this story from? Like this story and also subscribe to this channel for more interesting revenge and betrayal stories.